Welcome to the new camping, man. I hope you're feeling new today. Today's intro, the history of Southwell. That's right, Southwell. I'm calling it Southwell and you'll find out why later. I call it Southwell and I've lived here a long time, most of my life. So it's the history of Southwell. Old silk mill is exactly what it implies, an old silk mill. Talk about this mill. The mill I'm at now was part of Arkwright's mill. And Arkwright's mill has got very big heritage in Derbyshire. So Arkwright, that is Sir Richard Arkwright. Okay, Sir Richard Arkwright was to do with a mill in Derbyshire. Okay, in Cromford Mill in Derbyshire. If you've ever been there, go and investigate that. I've been to that near Matlock. And there's a lot of history to do with this, and these were to do with making cotton, and most of the time the cotton was used along the Greek. You know, the Greek was used to make the mill make the cotton, if that makes sense. Okay, then eventually from the Arkwright's mill, it then became, apparently, and I didn't know this bit, it then became a silk mill. And during the Second World War it became a silk mill, and then in the 1980s it was then turned into places of residence and places to live, which it is today. So it's got history in Derbyshire and under Arkwright, who was a very famous person to do with the cotton trade. So this is what this is, the mill. As you can imagine, the water from the Greek used to spin the mill wheel to make the cotton. And the Greek itself, we'll talk about the Greek in a bit of a walk in a minute. Let's go for a walk and have a talk about the Greek. Oh, the Greek. So the River Greek, you've got, it runs all the way to the Trent at some point. I know at some point, I don't know where the exact point is, but at one point it runs into the River Trent. And you've got a dike before that. Yeah, there's a dike called Potwell's Dyke. And more on that later. But yeah, that's basically the Greek. And yeah, so you've seen a bit of it, and it's a pretty river. And not really talked about very much, but round here it's well known. So yeah, the Greek. So this mill, is it Codwell's Mill? I never remember that, and never pronounced the name of it very well. But anyway, this mill, so this mill, the Southwell Burgage Mill, that's what I call it, and that's what it says on the plaque actually. I know it's got another name at the top, which probably is its traditional name. It used to ground flour here, and it's been grinding, used to grind flour a long time. It then became a factory. I remember it called Happy Pets. And it was a pet factory at one point, and then that became in disarray. Apparently it was a fire here at one point as well. It's saying in 1867. So in 1867 there's a fire here. Okay, but apparently it was renowned for its award-winning flour in 1917 according to the plaque. So there we go. And then it was converted into apartments. I remember it's Happy Pets, and it used to be like a pet factory or a pet toy factory. So toys for pets. There we go. So I'm just going to the foyer, the workhouse at Southwell. A little bit noisy doing some things. I think there we go. And there's the layout. I haven't been here myself. I've been meaning to come since I was younger, but it's probably well worth a visit. Come and visit it, the workhouse, and I think I'm going to do it someday. So that's the workhouse at Southwell. So there's, if you go that direction, and we're in Southwell still, that leads to the old race course. So, bit of history about the races, Southwell races, or Southwell races, as I call it, as what it is. Well, we'll come to that, as I say, in a moment. And then, direction to the Minster, which we'll talk about later. Just going to sit down and you've seen number 75. And you're thinking, why is number 75 significant? Number 75 Church Street was where the first ever, and I mean the first ever, Bramley Apple was conceived. In other words, this was the place where the first ever tree was ever planted of the famous Bramley apple. So Southwell is notorious for Bramley apples, or the start of the Bramley apple, the very start. And cuttings of that tree have been basically shipped all over the world, and they're grown round here because Southwell used to be an orchard. The whole area used to be an orchard. In fact, if you walk around Southwell, you'll see a lot of fruit trees, and that's because of its heritage of being an orchard. So number 75, a little pit was grown in the ground by a young lady, and it all started there. And then it became, it was actually to do with a gardener. I think his name was Henry Merriweather. I think it says in the plaque, Henry Merriweather, and Matthew Bramley. And it all started the cuttings of that tree. Now that tree actually got a fungus disease, but it's still growing, it's still going on, they're still maintaining it, but they cloned it. So there's a clones of that tree. So when you think of next time you have a Bramley apple, think that the Southwell in Nottinghamshire is where it all began, the Bramley apple. And outside, further up the road, is the Bramley Apple pub, and it's all in Bramley Close. It's all around here. The famous Bramley started here. So now you know the Bramley apple started in Southwell. So this whole area, the whole area here, well, this area used to be the school, and it was actually my school. It's the school I went to, the Minster School, and this was the Church Street site. But actually, this became very important. It's a very archaeological site. In fact, it is the area of the biggest the biggest Roman villa in the whole of the UK. So this is where, and obviously that would maybe disputed, but that's what I read up on it. It's one of the biggest archaeological sites of a villa of its type in the whole of the UK. I believe it stretched all the right over there and all the way, I dare say, to the Minster. So this whole area was a villa, baths, and there's a Roman road that's inside the church that tells you more about the Roman road that was here. So this Southwell is a famous old Roman town as well. Okay? Here lies the grounds of the Bishop's Palace in Southwell. Now this place is a ruin, but there's probably a good reason for that. In fact, there is a good reason for that. Oliver Cromwell spent a lot of time here with his men, and I think they ransacked the place and probably burnt it to pieces or done something really nasty. I don't know a lot about why it's a ruin, but it wouldn't be surprised if it's something to do with that. In fact, I know a lot of historians have said it's a lot to do with Oliver Cromwell. The reason it is a mess. Well, it's not a mess, is it? It's a pretty place, but you understand the circumstance that the reason why it's in a ruin is all to do with Oliver Cromwell and the Civil War, as with Newark, which obviously I've done a video about before. So this is all related to the Civil War, and this is why the Bishop's Palace is in disarray, but it's still a pretty place, and I dare say they're making sure that it's looked well kept, and the gardens are really pretty. Years ago you couldn't actually walk in these gardens, but look, they've really done it out, and families and people like that are all here now, and it's a really, really pretty place. So we're outside the Minster. Minster? No, actually, yes, it is a Minster, but it's a cathedral. Now, any town that has a cathedral is classed as a city. So not many people know that actually Southwell is actually Southwell City. And it's got a football club called Southwell City because of the cathedral. There we go. So the circumstances about this cathedral, or the Minster, as they call it, I call it cathedrals personally, but there we go, it's the Minster, that's what everybody's calling it. So the thing about the cathedral is if you were to look from the air and fly on it, it's in the shape of a cross. Now that is typical of what the Normans used to do, actually put it as a cross. Now if you think now there's an actual area on the end though that makes that slightly not look like a cross anymore, and that's the chapter house, but that was actually added later. This whole area, or this old building, was actually started about, or made about, made? I don't know if made's the word, but I would say constructed, that's the word, constructed, back in the 1100s. So this is typically a Norman church, and there would have been Saxon churches before it. So this has been in place of that. A lot of the stone would have actually probably been from round here, because there's, even, you know, as of recently in the 1980s, unfortunately, a lot of the quarries that went round there and a lot of the pits, a lot of the stone would have probably been from round here. So you can see that in the architecture that the stone is actually local. You actually can't see it, but you understand it is local. So a lot of the lead on the roof was more likely from Derbyshire. Okay, a guess it would have been from Derbyshire. I can't substantiate that one as well, but that's a guess, and I suppose the historians may prove me wrong if that's the case, but as far as I know, it would make sense that they could get the lead from Derbyshire, as because there was a lot of lead in Derbyshire. There we go, it's Derbyshire mines. So what we're going to do is I'll walk around in a bit and talk a little bit more about it, and we'll actually show you an area which is not really talked about, and I'm going to show you an actual pillar that looks like a grave, but it's not what you think. It's not a grave at all. It's a passageway, an escape route into the actual church. Not many people know that this exists, and I remember seeing this when I was a boy and was amazed when I was looked round the back of it and know that it was an escape route from Oliver Cromwell's men. So that's round the side. Watch this. Let's have a look. So a normal gravestone, you'd think, and you'd be wrong. Because round the other side of here, there is an escape route into the church. So that would have been where people would have used a way of getting into the church to seek sanctuary from Oliver Cromwell's men or other things, or sanctuary in general. There's steps that lead down into the church from there. So pretty good. You wouldn't know, would you, at all? The chapter house was an added addition in 1290 during the reign of William Longshanks. So, the chapter house, it's pretty spectacular inside. A lot of the cannons used to be in this particular area, and it's got lots of architecture that's part of it. The cathedral itself is fairly spectacular inside. I'm going to see if I can get inside it. I think we're still allowed, but if not, at least you've had a look at the outside of it. But there are a lot of things to be aware of. Some of these stained glass windows are actually spectacular from the inside too. Okay, so I've always called Southwell Southwell. This is controversial, right? Okay, because you will have people that call it Southwell, but I've grown up here all my life and call it Southwell. Now the thing is, I like the word Southwell, and it does great when people call it Southwell. But there we go, there's reasons that people have. Now the thing is, with Southwell, there is a bit of an argument even with that, because with the words in Southwell as a place, there is a situation where apparently there was a well that faced the south, and you have Norrell, which was the north well, apparently. So this is all hearsay, and that's probably where it's got its name from, Southwell. Having saying that, if you go to the Rodney pub down the road, they have a plaque about the south, about the well, a well that's in there, and that may have been the original Southwell. Equally though, at the Bishop's Palace, there was meant to be a spring there. So there's meant to be a plaque that says Southwell. But I've always grown up knowing it as Southwell, and then people who move into the place call it Southwell. So I'm not going to correct them. It does get on my nerves, but then again, I suppose Southwell gets on theirs. So this is really controversial subject. So people call it Southwell, people call it Southwell. And I think in the day and age, we all just get it by. But yeah, it's Southwell to me. But that's because I've had, in my history, it makes sense that there's wells that face south. But then again, you've got places like Blidworth, Blidworth. Yep, so these are old names. It's not even spelt the same, but Blidworth and Blidworth. So you have Rainworth, Renworth. Now, if I called it Rainworth, now my dad's not alive now, but he would have turned in his grave if I called it Rainworth. The thing is, but occasionally I do slip and call it Rainworth. Oh dear. Right, but the point is, Aram, Avram. It's always been Aram to me. But this is all to do with the history as well. So, Southwell, Southwell, call it what you like. To me, it's Southwell, though. I'm sorry, it's Southwell to me. But that's the end of that subject. I thought we'd touch on that, but we'll probably go to the Rodney and let's have a look at that if I've got time. At the moment, my battery's getting a bit low, but we'll have a look. I want to have a get a look in this church if we can get a chance, okay? So let's see if we can have a look inside. Or the cathedral, the Minster. So some of the stonework, it's quite spectacular. So I'll walk around. So you can see some of the stained glass windows and there are many services here. So this is all about the chapter house, as I mentioned. So the cathedral, quite good, it's quite big, and a lot of time there'll be marriages, funerals and other services even in this bit. Okay. Saracens Head Pub in Southwell. Now, Saracens Head Pub is quite famous for the fact that King Charles spent his last night of freedom here before being sent to Kelham and then being sent on to London for execution. So King Charles, I think there's information inside. I'm not going to go inside at the minute, but this is basically the Saracens Head Pub and all to do with Civil War. King Charles spent his last night of freedom here at the Saracens. So this is another place that claims this is the well, the famous well that got Southwell its name within the Rodney pub. Okay, there we go. Southwell, or Southwell, as is the actual name it should be called, but Southwell's just probably come out because of my accent. I call it Southwell, but it's Southwell. This was a First World War hospital, apparently, but there's more to it than that one. This was Lord Byron's house. There we go, Lord Byron's house. So, not just a hospital, it was Lord Byron's house as well. Quite grand, isn't it? So there we go, Lord Byron's house in Southwell. It's summer's day. So if you didn't believe it was an actual, like, prison, actually it was a police, this area was the prison. And some of my family used to live at the back of that. Not in the prison, although Criminals we're not, but you never know. Might have had a bad history. Okay, so it's new stuff to learn all the time. Houses of correction. Now I told you, didn't I? Houses of correction. The prison. Yeah. Don't know if you can see that. Probably not. Trust me though, this is the houses of correction. Was built in 1808. So you just seen the prison or the houses of correction. The best place to end the video, to be honest. Okay, on the Southwell Trail, a train line that ran all the way from Southwell to Mansfield. In the days of steam, you could come down this line all the way from Southwell to Mansfield. Walk to Billsthorpe down here now. Okay, and I dare say I'll do that one day. Tempted to do it today, but I'm not going to video it. It'll be a long video, but it will be a video worth watching. So maybe I'll think about that, and maybe it's something to think about. Southwell to Billsthorpe. I always say Newark because that's where I live now, but say Southwell to Billsthorpe. Might be worth doing. But anyway, thanks for watching the New Camping Man. Please subscribe, ring that bell, and check out my other history videos. I've got a few of Newark. Bureaus of Newark, history of Newark. Go and check them out. Thank you very much for watching. I really enjoyed this. I really wanted to do it. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.